Hello and good morning. We are in the Omuugn studios. We are talking today about a really interesting topic and one that I know is going to be a huge hit with most of us. This is from the insights and wisdom of Omuugn, and today we're talking about communication. So please help me welcome Omuugn. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm actually wonderful. We're kind of cold in this area of the country, but beautiful day, soft snow falling from the skies.
You said there are different ways we communicate. I'm the kind of person that I'm always in a hurry. I show up at the fitness center. I just blast past the front desk. I go and I do my workout. I blast past the front counter again on my way out the door and I'm gone. That's my normal. But sometimes it comes off as I don't see you and I don't acknowledge you and you're not a real person to me. I'm at a position in my life where I'm trying to improve my communication skills. As a result of that, I started out saying if I was going to communicate with someone and they did not acknowledge me, do I acknowledge them first? And this is kind of how do we communicate? So I started with the little attempts. When we walk in, we see somebody, we kind of nod our head like, hey, I see you. And as I've gotten to know people better, my gestures have gotten bigger, like, hi, I see you all the way across the room. We've changed the level of communication. It's just a little tiny tweak of my own behaviors that has changed the way that I communicate.
You move from strangers to acquaintances to friends, and you start moving down the levels of communication. They become more and more meaningful. Communication takes place in a lot of different ways, and most of the communication actually is nonverbal. Usually, when we think of communication, we think of verbal interaction. But if you show a disinterest in a person, if you just look away and ignore them, or your body language, or your facial expression, or all different kinds of nuances, people can tell if you're trying to really make their acquaintance and communicate something meaningful or if you're just sort of in the way and
Mhm.
wasting their time. How you communicate is really important, and when to communicate and where to communicate. Every person you meet is important. Where it all begins is really with ourselves. How do we communicate with ourselves? If we don't communicate with ourselves well, how can we communicate with other people well? One of the reasons that I got into this book that I wrote was we all have different traits and characteristics, and we don't really identify them very well as a separate entity like communication. We just sort of assume that we're communicating well and that people understand us when we talk with them. There are things like mindfulness, being aware of where you are, what's going on around you, the people around you. Do they look agitated? Do they look calm? Do they look happy? Do they look frustrated? We turn on the news and we see people rioting in the street over whatever cause it might be. Do those riots actually help? Do they solve problems? Do they move legislation? Do they have a real meaningful impact? Is that a way to communicate effectively? Some people communicate that way. They've chosen to do that, but that violates every principle of communication. So we have to be mindful, really, of the world around us. There are things like meditation and looking into your own belief system. Why do I believe this? I grew up in this culture, and so I was taught to believe this thing. Now that I'm older and I can use my own mind and do my own research and come to my own understanding, maybe I need to look at this a different way. Maybe that doesn't apply to my life the way I prefer. Maybe I need to look for something else or believe something else. We have to analyze really how our mind works, what we focus on. We need to listen to our self talk. What am I saying to myself when I'm just talking? Do I hold myself in high esteem or do I say negative things about myself? Do I degrade myself because of the way I look, or I don't have a lot of resources? So do I look at myself negatively and in comparison with other people who seem to be doing better than I am financially? Connecting with ourself and focusing on specific things and going into our belief system, we have a connection with the divine and with the creative blueprint of the master creator. All of that involves communication on different levels and in different parts of who we are. So asking ourselves the right questions and searching for those answers and taking our experiences and putting them into lessons that we learn. Those are really valuable things. And if we learn to do that with ourselves, we begin to understand how things work and how things are more effective than other things. The first step is listening. So if you're going to communicate with someone, you should actually actively listen to them. Don't think about what you're going to say next, or don't try to put everything into perspective yet. You're just gathering information by what they're saying. Listen to what people are saying. Look at their emotional attachment to what they're saying.
Oftentimes, I'll be working on the computer and my husband will come in, and without turning around and making eye contact, he asks me a question and I respond as if you're interrupting me, you're bothering me. And that's kind of the message that I'm sending, even if it's not intentional. I decided to stop what I was doing and really pay attention, just like, does communication really matter? I want him to know that he matters. He matters to me. I see you. And I really started focusing on this. It's just a way of paying attention to people that are in our lives that so easily we do ignore. It's easy to ignore the people that are closest to us. And I wish that wasn't the case.
Feedback is an important part of communication. And so that leads into a different level of communication because you're talking about something very specifically now.
Mhm.
And you can go into, well, I really do love and appreciate you, and I miss you when you're not here. And it can lead you into some really positive things. We need to be open to feedback and we need to be open to truly listening. And like you say, taking the time to focus on people. Every person is important. We can learn something from every person that we interact with. Another principle, too, is clarity. We all need to learn to express our ideas clearly and concisely. The language has to be appropriate to the audience that you're speaking to. If you're talking to your wife or your husband, you need to take into consideration that they think differently than you do, and you need to communicate differently.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this. And for those of you that have not had a chance to, please get your copy of The Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn. This is volume one. It is part one of part two. There are actually two parts that are available now. We meet here so that we can discuss the next segment inside The Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn with Omuugn himself. Thank you for joining me today. Have a great week.